Well, greetings, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Duerrisms, the podcast, brought to you by our good friends at Advanced Physical Therapy. This one kind of a bad news, good news scenario. Our guy, Matt Schuckman, has worse health luck right now than Joel Embiid. He's on the IR, dinged up from, doubtful and downgraded to out this week due to some issues he had on the ice. We wish him a speedy and complete recovery. But in his stead, we are lucky enough to have the great Ben Marth with us, who you remember from 16 years of incredible work on television, serving our community and our kids. And I'll say this to you, Ben, as somebody who spends an awful lot of time in the car listening to the radio, maybe the best play-by-play guy who's come through this area in a long, long time. And now you're doing some stuff freelance for Muddy River these days, and you're also the PA announcer for a lot of the Quincy Notre Dame games. And we thought, because Ben has seen more Quincy Notre Dame Raider and Lady Raider basketball than anybody, he would be a great candidate to have here. So welcome, my friend. Good to have you here.
This is amazing. First, to share a seat next to you. First off, obviously, we need to, if you're giving me a kudos, I've got to throw it right back and say thank you for all you've done for much longer time than I have. And thank you for everything you've done. You've done a lot for specifically my family, but you've also done it for hundreds of other families as well. So you're the best. I'm being 100% there by thanking you for all you've done.
Well, you're incredibly kind, my friend, but I'm telling you now, you've actually walked into an ambush today because we do not have one toss-up question for you, non-sports related. We've got two for you.
Yeah.
I had one specifically planned for Matt Schuckman, and I thought, I got Ben here. I got to do something Ben specific as well. So we'll start you off with this, and I remember from listening to the podcast that you did with Schuck last summer, you share an affinity for cheesy, what do you want to call them, guilty pleasure type movies. And we found out in the last couple of weeks that they're remaking maybe the most guilty, cheesy remake of all, Roadhouse.
Oh my.
Where is Ben Marth on the new Roadhouse, apparently starring Jake Gyllenhaal in the Patrick Swayze role? Will Ben Marth partake at all of the new Roadhouse, or are you a fan of the old Roadhouse, or does any of this register at all with you and interest you in any way?
I'm a sucker for 2 hours of nonsense. So yes,
Nice.
I will definitely watch that, no question. Yes, definitely going to watch that. Why not? It's obviously not going to hold a candle to the original, but let's see what the follow-up does,
It's hard for me because you're so used to the old version with Ben Gazzara and Patrick Swayze and Sam Elliott with the mustache and all the cheesy lines. But I think I have sort of softened, and now I'm kind of in your default. Where if it's on, I think I'll watch it at this point. So
if they're going to have a remake of Cannonball Run, Chris, I'm going to be there too.
That's fair enough. And bring back Dom DeLuise for all of us, please.
Yes, exactly.
I want to start with something more specific because I know people who know you around here know you are a native of one of my favorite food cities in the entire country, in St. Louis. And I don't think St. Louis ever gets enough credit for what a wonderful city it is and what a great food city it is. What is the quintessential Ben Marth, St. Louis go-home food experience for you?
Man, what a great question that is. It would be Emo's Pizza for me personally.
Yeah.
I like...
Does it get any more St. Louis than that, really?
Toasted ravioli,
yeah.
You're right. The Hill, Emo's, barbecue has really taken off. As you know, you're a barbecue guy.
Yeah.
It's really taken off with all the different locations that are kind of taking off with that side of the food. But I would probably start on the Italian side.
Okay.
That's where I would start and kind of go from there. But man, you can't beat a good barbecue joint right down there.
I tried Goya's for the first time with the hot salami sandwich because I saw that on the places you have to eat in St. Louis that you've never eaten in. That was amazing. Ted Drew's, where does that fit in for you?
Well, if Emo's is one, it's Ted Drew's is 1A or 1B, you've got to have some frozen custard to go along with it. And yes, that is a staple. Go there. I'm sure you've been there. You go there on a summer night and there's 100,000 people there. But the way that they are able to get people in and out of the line is masterful.
It really is. One more for you, because I know you're a guy who loves the White Castle. So I don't have a lot of working ability with the White Castle. I've been there once. It's been many, many years. I know you're a huge fan.
You've been there once, which means you've never been again, which means you weren't a big fan.
Well, I was young when that happened, so I didn't really understand the whole. So how many sliders is enough sliders? in Ben Marth's world.
Gosh, at my age of 47, I'd say 0. but 10, 20, however many years ago, you're talking 8 to 12,
God
probably.
bless.
There's a number, they've got a number 1 there that was the cheeseburgers, the cheese fries, the chicken rings, and then a drink. I mean, you're set up for cardiac attack immediately, within minutes. Outside of probably another attack as well, if you get my drift. But no, that's kind of where you start. That 8 to 10 ratio.
Okay.
And kind of go from there.
So I had no gauge because I'm used to ordering a hamburger, and
you're an In-N-Out guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, because when St. Louis got a Shake Shack, I had never tried Shake Shack, had heard everything. That's a really good burger.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, this is neat. This has come here, and I felt almost guilty because you're a West Coast guy. You're supposed to champion In-N-Out. I thought Shake Shack was better. I thought that was a really good burger. So
wow.
The signature burger with the chili peppers on top of it, really good stuff. So
I've got to ask you a question then
okay.
too. Because I haven't seen any Kings memorabilia around here at all, Sacramento Kings, and your affinity to Sacramento Kings. Where will they wind up when it's all said and done?
I think that depends on the trade deadline. We're waiting to see what happens because as currently composed and constructed, that team's not good enough defensively. And the West is just loaded, as you well know.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really neat, as just a fan of basketball, to see Oklahoma City make the rise that it's made, to see Minnesota kind of come along as they have come along. I mean, the West is a quagmire, and you still got to get through Denver if you get through the back end of all of that. So I don't know. I'm still very hopeful. It's still been a very fun season, but it's weird, Ben, because I mean, for years and years and years, I think you went through this with the Blues. Yeah. They were just good enough. And I spent a lot of years where they weren't good enough with the Kings. And now they're to the point where the Blues were when every year they're kind of now not quite good enough to get over the top and to win the Stanley Cup. So it's like, what's that next step? What's that magic elixir, the secret sauce that kind of gets you over the top? And it's weird to be there after 20 years because for 20 years, you're just hoping they're good again. So it's been a very weird ride, but it's been a fun ride. It's nice.
Are they one guy? Are they one guy away? I mean,
I think they're one really good defensive guy away. I think they figured it out, and I think if anybody hasn't watched them, the Keegan Murray thing is unreal. He has been an unreal two-way player, and I think if you hear the comparisons to Kawhi Leonard, I think they're very fair the way he's playing defense right now. So that guy has been an incredible changer of the calculus of who they are. I still think they need one more guy that can defend because they give up way too many points.
We could probably spend the next half hour talking about the Sacramento Kings.
We absolutely could, but we're going to talk some basketball closer and more local to home. And as I mentioned, you've had a chance to see a lot of the Raiders and the Lady Raiders this year. And obviously, when you talk about the Superfan Shootout, that is an event that is very much rigged over the years to being a centerpiece of really good local girls basketball. We had the Quincy Shootout 2 weeks ago. That was about national powers and boys basketball at its finest. This is kind of more a celebration of the local. And Quincy Notre Dame has been endemic to that, obviously, under Eric Warren and what they've been able to do the last couple of years. And then you remember all the great battles with Clopton when you first got to town that kind of made this. What do you like about this Quincy Notre Dame team? And I think, post Abby, obviously, and what they've been able to do. What has stood out to you? And we'll talk about last night's game, obviously, in a second. But what have you really liked about the job Eric Warren's done and the construct of this team, Ben?
Well, when I look at it right away off the top, Chris, it's the fact they don't have a single senior. So they're playing juniors, sophomores. They're playing a freshman or so. They've got an interesting mix right now. They're starting to develop their bench a little bit. Their starting five is as good, I think, as you're going to find in Class 3A girls basketball within the state of Illinois. I mean, that starting five is dynamic. They have the ability to shoot from the outside with Sage Stratton. They have the ability to get to the hole with Ari Bueller. They have the ability to work inside with Tristan Pieper. They have, Jenna Durst. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the Eversman girls coming off the bench, they've got a lot of weapons. They've done a lot of. They have a tough schedule. I mean, they're a brutal schedule. Eric Warren does not shy away from playing anybody. I think they will be as battle tested, and I think you would, confirm that with me as well. They'll be as battle tested as anybody, maybe in the entire state of Illinois, as far as their difficult schedule is concerned. Really looking forward to how they match up with Clopton. I know what Devon Street has done at Clopton. It's been, remarkable every year, and even before then, as you well know, with Ed Lindsay. I mean, that program is unbelievable what Clopton has been able to do. So I'm looking forward to seeing them play the Notre Dame girls just to see that. And then, of course, Oakville on Saturday. You know, you're talking about a top 5 team in 1A. I mean, a remarkable matchup.
To your mind, is there a more positively improved player than Tristan Pieper that you've seen this year?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's a valid point. I mean, she's a sophomore. She plays like a senior some nights. The ability to play above the rim sometimes, per se, from a female standpoint,
right.
Not dunking, but I mean playing that capability, being able to pull down double-doubles. She's almost a double-double machine some nights. Yes, I would agree with you. I think she's right at the top of the list of that most improved player list, and you know, I just like their mix, and I like the fact that they've got, you know, the capability of shutting you down defensively as well. Albeit what happened on Tuesday night was not exactly what we thought would happen. I thought we'd expect a lot more closer game, as you alluded to talking about that. But for the most part, I think Notre Dame is as good as any girls basketball team in the 2A, 3A mix. It's going to be interesting to see, not to look too far ahead, but what happens when the regional pairings come out later this week, when the the subsectional and all that kind of, to see kind of where they land.
Not to get off topic with you, but I do think last night was a moment for Quincy High basketball.
Yeah.
And obviously we know what's coming with Chloe Nicholson down the road, but right now those freshmen are awfully good. And obviously when you have Taylor Foey and you have obviously Jada inside, that's a matchup issue for anybody who's not big. I don't think that's a slight to Quincy Notre Dame what happened last night. I just think that's a moment. Is that fair, Ben?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think you're right on it. I agree with you 100% that there should be no, all the kudos should be going to Quincy High School and Brad Dance's program and what they've done. Top 10 team in the state.
Right.
You and I have been here long enough
to
think. That's
been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you're going back a little ways before me. Probably when you were first starting around here, the Quincy High girls program was good. But to see them on the map, to be a top 10 team, to see all the young players that they have, absolutely remarkable. But it was interesting to kind of read about that game and how Eric Warren did something different offensively to try and shake things up a little bit. And he took credit for the loss, saying it was my mistake. I tried something new, it didn't work out. We'll see if there's any hangover per se moving forward.
Obviously, they've got a couple of games before they get to the Superfan Shootout. And obviously you touched on it. That Clopton game on Friday night is kind of a traditional game, but it's non-traditional in terms of players because Clopton is super young, much like Quincy Notre Dame. That's a high-energy game because I know when Clopton came over for the Rumble on the River, it was the freshmen. It was Bobby Spoonster's twins. It was, Ed Lindsay's granddaughter. Yeah. They got a lot of really good young talent. You saw some of that game. That ball is going to flow, and that ball is going to move up and down the court a lot. That's a fun spectator game, is it not?
I agree. I think we're going to see maybe in the 50s. I mean,
yeah.
Which I think is going to be a high-octane, high-fueled, two very good coaches going at one another, which will be absolutely outstanding basketball. I'm excited for the future of Clopton basketball with the girls' side because they are absolutely fantastic and will be for a long time.
You touched on Oakville, and obviously you touched on it, defending 1A state champion. And Eric Warren told us this week, maybe plays harder than anybody. I got a little bit of a sneak peek when I went down to Breeze to see them down at the Paws Shootout, and they were playing the back end of an overtime game. This is the kind of test that Eric Warren always likes to set up just before regionals. And this year the calculus is different going up to 3A for them. This is a pretty well-timed game. Would you not agree that at least it kind of, and not to take anything away from the schedule they've already played, because they have played some absolute, dogs, as you've touched on. But this game seems to be more important just because of where it's placed.
I'm interested in fatigue. That's going to be the fifth game in 5 days for Notre Dame. I mean, you've got Quincy High, you've got Pittsfield, you've got Liberty, you've got Clopton, you've got Oakville. That's going to be an interesting factor, I think, going into that game. But yes, I'm looking forward to seeing Oakville. It's some team I don't see. You see, because you travel all over the place. I don't get to see them, so I'm looking forward to see what they bring to the table. It's going to be a great test for Notre Dame because then they get almost a week off before Jefferson City Helias and finishing off the regular season.
Not an easy way to finish
on the road.
Either. Yeah.
So this will be, not without a senior, so they're not going to, they'll be back again, all these girls next year, but it's their last chance to play at home this weekend, and looking forward to see how they react to that and seeing how they can play that many games in such a short time.
One last one on the girls' side for you, because you've been around this before, and the atmosphere is probably the biggest crowd the girls play in front of all season, because that gym is packed and starts packing late in the day, and then all of a sudden they're playing as the marquee attraction. Eric Warren mentioned juice in the gym. That matters, doesn't it, when there's an energy there, and those girls seem to feed off of it.
I think so. I think we're gonna see a great crowd, and I think we're gonna see the matchups that you've put together and your staff have put together are going to just entice that even more And I mean, look at the matchups you've got.
Shameless plug,
I mean,
yes.
look at some. I mean, this. I know you taunt this as having great matchups all year, but I think from top to bottom, it's one of your best.
I think we have been very lucky with some of the things that we've gotten. I think that brings us to the pivot point on the boys. And before I get into the American Family KHQA Superfan Shootout rundown for Q&D, it seems like Kevin's still trying to figure some things out rotationally. But do you see the potential there?
I do. You know, the Aiden Gennebacher injury is going to hurt.
Yeah.
You know, he's out at least this weekend, and maybe, hopefully not beyond that from his sake. But it's still finding that right mix. It's still finding out, okay, when do I play the other three sophomores? And how much do I play the other three sophomores? How many minutes do I give this player to that player? Connor Young was out sick, didn't play last weekend. Alex Dance admirably stepped in and took over that starting position. Alex has started a lot of games this year. It's an interesting dynamic, Chris, that this team has where they just haven't been able to find that right 5, 6, 7, and maybe I'm amiss in saying that, but just seeing them as many times as I have, they're still kind of looking for that, I don't know, image, flavor, something, you know, identity, and it's 20 games into the year.
It kind of strikes me as like being a chef and having good ingredients and not quite figuring out in what balance to get them to harmonize yet. But I don't think it's too late, is it?
No, I agree with you. I think they've got plenty of time, and they've got, I believe, 7 games left, you know, including this weekend. They've got 4 of those, I believe, at home. So, I mean, you've still got Wes Hancock coming up down the road. Keokuk and Zach Summers' squad is a much improved group. You know, you still got that rivalry game with Liberty. I mean, there's a lot of games still there, but I think there's time, especially with, they're not a 3A, they're a 2A program still, and could probably, I don't know, turn some heads?
They certainly are positioned to do that if everything sets right. And I think this weekend is big because they're playing 1A powers this weekend. Obviously, Madison, a traditional power. And if you've looked at Nesto Hoops, West Central, which, I mean, is just a tremendous group of kids that seem to fit together almost perfectly. Number 2 in the state in 1A right now in Nesto Hoops, at least as far as they're concerned. What strikes you about those 2 games? Is it just the chance to play some elite type competition that's maybe a lower class, but see where you're at right now?
I think so. I mean, Madison aside, you know, everybody's looking at the game Saturday night.
Right.
I mean, everybody's really focused on that game and what that will bring. But it's high fuel, high octane. Let's get up and down, you know, and play. And I think Notre Dame likes to play that a little bit. They play that style, not helter skelter, but they like to get up and down the floor. They have enough bodies. You know, Kevin Meyer's playing, you know, has played 9, 10, even sometimes 11 guys. -1 this weekend. But it'll be interesting to see, again, how they play in that kind of atmosphere. It's at home. You get a chance to play in front of your home crowd. Again, the atmosphere should be fantastic, especially Saturday night.
Right.
You know how well-traveled Winchester
right.
and
they
Bluffs and everybody.
Yes.
They're going to be there, which is going to be fantastic. I'm going to see every game this weekend, like yourself. I know you're going to be there.
I am.
I'm going to see every game this weekend for the first time in KHQA Superfan Shootout history. So I'm looking forward to it.
We're thankful to have you. Now, on that front, I'll point out that you probably understand St. Louis area basketball better than anybody. Principia is really good, and that was Winchester West Central's opponent, obviously, in the Saturday morning game at the Quincy Shootout. And West Central was beaten up. They had played that night before, and obviously not their best performance, but I don't know that you can gauge much off of that because Principia is a different level, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, they guarded Q&D for 32 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was as good of a defensive effort as I've seen in that gym in a long, long time. And that night, when you got to see Chicago Simeon and you got to see Chicago Curry and you got to see Lee's Summit West and then Notre Dame Principia sandwiched in between all of that. Talk about an incredible night of hoops, but yeah, I don't think you gauge a lot from, I mean, Principia is really good. They're going to make a run. They're as good, and with Coach Blossom leading that, Jay Blossom leading that program, you couldn't ask for better than they just beat Webster Groves, if memory serves.
Super impressive and big for Jay Blossom, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. To go back home and win that.
On the list of people you're excited to see individually, where does Zach Evans rank? Because I don't know, did you see him last year when they were in the gym for the Superfan Shootout?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does Zach Evans rate for you? This would be the second time.
Right. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing just kind of the maturation process and the growth period. I mean, I've followed that kid since he was, you know, probably in the 7th to 8th grade range as well, with the success they have and have always had for a long time at the junior high levels. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing him and what other pieces they have around him, and just kind of seeing how Q&D kind of defends him and how they're going to try and take him away, because he's probably going to get his, I would imagine. He's that kind of player where he's going to be able to get his points, but how they're going to be able to, Winchester, West Central that is, surround him and get points elsewhere. and QND as well. I think it's as big of a game for QND as it is West Central.
I would agree.
With the postseason year.
Let's talk a little bit about the rest of the schedule. What are you excited about? And I think when I ask that question of people, the first words I get from everybody are Central Southeastern versus Palmyra. I mean, I think you want to talk about a girls' showcase game. You saw what Matt Long's team did, rallying back from 16 down to beat DMAC.
Yeah.
You put that DMAC win with the Galena win. I mean, Matt Long has done some incredible things with this group this year, and everybody's heard about Lauren Miller. This might be the toughest test, I would argue, that Palmyra has seen all year, or at least since Quincy Notre Dame.
Yeah, and you mentioned before we went on air here about Kander King's injury and how much that affects Palmyra. That, of course, is the #1 game that jumps out to me.
Okay.
As far as your schedule is concerned for this weekend. Really looking forward to seeing Palmyra, a state-ranked team. How can they bounce back? How can they deal with the injuries? I've been fortunate to see Central Southeastern a couple of times, both the Rumble and the River and QND, which was the weirdest girls basketball game I have ever seen in my life. One-sided, one side, and then on the second half, Central made it a 1-2 possession game in the final minute or so. That one sticks out. I'm really looking forward to seeing West Hancock boys. I just love Jeff Dahl's program and the way that they play. Coach Dahl he's dynamic in the way that he approaches things. I'm looking forward to seeing them for the first time. I haven't seen them this year. And then I don't know why, but the Jacksonville Route Monroe City boys game.
Yeah.
I mean, really gets me amped.
So I will say this to you because I know you haven't seen Route a whole lot yet. Bryson Mossman reminds me a lot of J.D. Summers. Not quite to that level, but the same approach, the same ability to just knock down jumpers relentlessly. And he's just a sophomore.
Wow.
I mean, there's a poise to that kid that I think is incredible. One of the games that I really like, Ben, that you didn't mention yet was, and we've got both coaches in the area, boys active coaches who have state rings. Obviously, you talked about Jeff Dahl, and you're right. West Hancock is really good, and when the threes are falling, they're as good as anybody right now. I would argue that Lewis Siegfried has played as well as anybody. But Van Far is the other one in that mix. Just a couple of years removed from that, 2018 state championship that Pat Conaway engineered. Nikos Conaway seems like he's been there forever.
Yeah.
As good a point guard as there is. They're coming off a championship that they really took away, from Clopton the other night over at the Bowling Green tournament. And you've got Van Far against Camp Point Central.
Wow.
You've got a head-to-head between Nick Moore and Nikos Conaway. Those guys know each other because I know they play in Johnny Dahl's deal together. Right. Just from a standpoint of guard versus guard, what does that do when you have 2 point guards that are that electric, that are guys that are leaders, that seem like they've been there forever? To that matchup, what do you like about that?
Well, floor generals, right? You want to watch how they kind of pick apart the opposing defense. And then on the other side, how they're guarding each other, right? That one-on-one matchup. There's nothing better than watching Isaiah Thomas go up against Magic Johnson. Remember back in those days where it was just mano-a-mano, one-on-one. Nick Moore is not only a great athlete, but he's a great kid.
He is.
And quarterbacked that team to the state championship in football. And Nikos Conaway, I don't know as well, but of course, you follow the Van Far program very well. Excited to see kind of how that matchup, starts, how it finishes, and how they can get the other guys around them kind of rallied together and see who comes out the victor.
How much have you enjoyed this, Ben? I know, stepping away from television when you did, and you made the decision, obviously, to support your family, and you had kids dragging you. I mean, you have 3 very talented kids in your family. Just from your standpoint, is it nice to kind of get the sports juices going again, even if it's just a little part-time for you? Because I know the world misses you writ large, and it's nice to pick up your byline and see you on Muddy River again.
It is fun. I like to write, as you do. You're a very good writer, as shown in Duerrisms and all the things you do online. I love to write, so yes, it's kind of fit right in. I still get people who tell me they see me every night on television. I haven't been on TV since 2018, and they still tell me, gosh, I really enjoy you. I watch you every night. That's flattering, but again, it's been 6 years since I've been on TV. But it never really leaves you, right?
Right.
I mean, once you have decided, probably 20, 30 years from now when you decided.
No, geez, God help us all. Put me out to pasture and take me out of my misery before that.
It's like being a coach, right? It never really leaves you. You really enjoy being around the coaches. Those are some of the things that I miss the most, that I assume you would too, the relationships you've had with the coaches, the administrators, the athletes. People ask me all the time, what do you miss? Or do you miss it? Would you go back? I have no interest in going back, but I do miss
Right.
the interactions with the people. And that's why I enjoy being back and being able to work not only with Muddy River, but also the things that I'm doing from an announcing and other scoreboard kind of things, is you still kind of have those relationships. You still see the people that you enjoyed seeing.
The pipes have always been good. When did you kind of discover you had an aptitude for this? And I will tell you this, Ben, as somebody who doesn't do play-by-play, that's like one of the hardest things ever. And I think, like, right from the start, you had a sense of a voice. Was that growing up listening to people? Was that having a hero or a mentor somewhere along the way? Because as you well know, play-by-play is as hard as it gets.
Yeah, and I that's the one thing that I miss. I mean, that is the one thing that I would love to be able to do at some point. And I've been approached, but I've just not really been at that part where I want to do it. But I absolutely love radio play-by-play.
Right.
Not to take anything away from television
Sure.
play-by-play. It's a whole different dynamic. You're filling a lot of airspace, so that's something I miss. But you grew up in St. Louis, Chris. I mean, you're thinking about the Bucks. You're thinking about Bob Costas.
Right.
You're thinking about anybody and everybody who's picked up a mic there. Mike Shannon. I mean, there's so many different names that I could bring up, but growing up there, but it was instilled by my father, my late father, who was, in the ministry for 40 years and was in a pulpit in front of me every Sunday. That's where it started, watching him shine in that theater, kind of reflected onto me as to maybe I want to try that, but in a different element.
Sure.
So that's kind of how it all started. And it is a good point. It is the play-by-play is the one thing that I really miss.
Well, and I think we miss you because it is, and I think the most important thing about play-by-play is that you aren't the show, but you give it guide rails, and you were so good at that. And I think people sometimes think when they get into this business that I have to be the show because I'm the voice. And I don't think you ever did that, which I always appreciated in listening to you. Was there a moment, play-by-play wise, that you knew that this was kind of your calling? Because, again, that's not an easy thing to find with the play-by-play side of things. And there aren't a lot of people who want to do it anymore. But, I listen to people like Dave Hunziker, and I just go, man, that's somebody who gets it. And that's kind of rare and lost these days.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, back in the old Busch Stadium, prior to the new one, the old Busch Stadium in St. Louis for Cardinals games had a place where you could go up and broadcast an inning, and they would VCR video record it.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So it was a suite, a private suite that they closed to the public, and it would be an actual, you could go spend however much money it was back then, and you could broadcast a full inning. And so my cousin would come visit me from Wisconsin, and he was too involved in wanting to get into the broadcasting side of things. And our grandfather would buy an inning for us at Busch Stadiums every summer, and we'd feel like we were doing, Major League Baseball for a half hour. And I remember doing that multiple times. We had one inning where it was 6 straight outs, and we were in there for like 7 minutes.
What a waste.
It's like, what a waste. What are we doing here?
Well, at least you weren't footing the bill at that point.
Yeah, right.
Do you have a favorite call? Do you have a favorite game you've called, Ben?
Oh, great question. One of my favorite calls goes back to my college days. It wasn't here. Back when I went to Valparaiso University,
yes.
During the heydays of Bryce Drew and
I forgot about the timing of that. How cool is that?
I didn't get to broadcast the games where he hit the shot, and of course, but leading up to that, the regular season games, and I remember Greg Tonigal, which was not one of the main guys, hit a 75-footer, I think, to beat Belmont in overtime on a 3-point shot, again, from almost full court, and it was the game-winning shot. And I got to call that, and I just thought, man, what an amazing, you caught up in the atmosphere. And again, like you said, you get out of the way, right? You shut up. You stop talking. That's the one thing I think about play-by-play announcers, when they talk over the atmosphere, when they talk over, an amazing time, and you want to hear the ambiance of the crowd and people shouting and everybody. That's where I think the best play-by-play broadcasters are. Like you mentioned, you get out of the way. You get out of the way, you describe the action, but when it's time to let the folks that are there take over, you shut up.
You, like me, are a transplant to this area, but yet you found a home here, and you've made this your home. And I think with you and I both, something that we similarly share is the fact that this place kind of gets an affection in you that you can't walk away from. Yeah. What do you love most about tri-state sports culture?
Man, I just love the people. I mean, I know that sounds simplistic.
It does, but it is.
I know it's just the people. I mean, it's just the people that you surround yourself by. You've been in it longer than I have, and I mean, you just love being around people. And a lot of the people that I talk to, and a lot of the people I know, I can probably speak for you in this regard, is that if you haven't seen them in a month, a year, 3 years, a day, whatever, you could pick up the conversation like you have just seen them, yesterday or 2 days ago. That's the kind of that's the kind of community that's involved here, right? I mean, everybody, everybody just really enjoys the activities and the sports and the camaraderie and the community, and that's something that's always been an attraction to me, always will be. That's something that's brought me back into it, because I don't have to,
Right.
I don't have to come back and do these kind of things. I've got other things I
You
can do.
are busy as can be. Yes.
I can do other things, but that's what's kind of brought me back into this, is just the people. That's why I really enjoy being around.
It is also unique that every community kind of has its own vibe and its own thing. And, when you're in that, they make you feel a part of that, do they not?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can talk about the years that you were with this program and you followed them to Champaign,
right.
Back during the Carthage and the Illini West football days.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And now Camp Point Central and following, the various Quincy University teams and whether it may be, you followed them during this long run. That's what, was Monroe City football. I mean,
Exactly.
It just goes on and on, that you can always look back, and when you see those people, you connect because you saw them at their highest thrilled moments, right? And you were there to capture it all. That's, there's nothing like being involved in a state championship game.
Exactly.
Nothing like it.
Is that your favorite memory? Do you have a favorite memory from the television days of something you chronicled? Because when you do that, one of the great honors that you and I have been bestowed, not a lot of people get to do this, but we get to be the soundtrack to people's memories.
Yeah.
Not just for them, but generations from now when they try to figure out how to rig up the old VCR and show, Ben Marth calling the highlight of the game-winning shot.
Yeah.
Do you have one moment that stands out above all others that was like the pinnacle TV moment?
Oh man, I don't know if I have a moment. I really enjoyed sharing stories.
Oh, yeah.
Much more so. I know we love being at the games, shooting the highlights, and that's a big, major part of what we do. But I just liked telling the stories. You do a great job of that, of telling, the story behind the story. That's something that I will always enjoy. Some of the non-traditional sports stories that we would do, whether
Right.
it's over at West Quincy at the racetrack, or whether it's
Oh, please don't say God game, because I can see your knees swelling from here.
It's not just my knees, buddy. But you're right. Those kind of non-mainstream kind of
Sure.
things that we got to shoot, and people that were maybe struggling with a disease or something, where we
Sure.
could tell their story and just surround them with love and their community. And we got to share those stories. That's what sticks out to me more so than being at a lot of the games. But again, being at a state championship, whether it was covering a Carthage, Illini West, Monroe City, however, Camp Point Central football team at a high octane state championship, or the QND girls or Quincy High boys. I mean, Friday nights at Blue Devil Gym. I mean, those moments where you're actually getting to shoot those moments and be involved. Like you said, you feel like you're part of it, right? When you're not part of it, but you're also then allowing others to be involved with it that are not part of those communities, right? You're bringing other people into these stories that are from surrounding communities. They too then feel part of it. That's what I think is pretty special.
I think it's very telling, not just that the 16 years you were on television, but obviously even now, that you're feeding back into this culture, because I think it still matters to you very greatly. And this place, you grew up in St. Louis. I grew up in Sacramento. Not a lot of places cover high school sports, junior high school sports, local college sports the way this place does. How proud are you of just being a part of a legacy of a lot of great storytellers that go back way before you and I got here, of just making this place special? Because it's not like this anywhere else, and it's certainly getting less and less like this if you look around the media landscape anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I used to, whenever I'd get a complaint or something back in my old television days, I maybe mispronounced a name, or I wasn't at this game, or whatever the complaint may be.
Did you recognize me disguising my voice on the other end of the phone? I kid.
Now after 22 years of being in Quincy, I finally know. But you think, like, this doesn't happen in other communities.
No.
Like, it doesn't. You should just be happy that we showed that individual on television, because where I grew up and where you grew up, high school sports were an absolute nothing. Now it's picked up.
It has.
I mean, it's picked up, as
Culture's
you know.
changed some,
Culture's
yes.
changed, where there's a little bit more online stuff, and I think it's great that St. Louis has picked up. There's more coverage of St. Louis high school sports than ever before. Still, there's a lot of lacking, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing that that we're able to profile and highlight these high school kids who, again, will leave this place and never get that sensation again. And when they're however many years old and they've moved out of this community and they're watching their local television and they're in a major market and they don't see a speckle of high school sports or anything related to that, they're going to think, man, how special was it where I was?
I'll give you one more kudo because you had one of my favorite tweets of the year. I think you were responding to the SEC network saying, well, this Abby Schreck person is going to be pretty good, I think, down the road. And I think you responded, I could have told you that since she was age 7.
Right.
Just how much fun is that seeing her? I know I'm not outing you here. Everyone knows you're a Mizzou fan.
Yeah.
How cool is it seeing her, somebody you've watched because of your daughter, almost her entire life, go to that level and be on the cusp of something incredibly special?
Well, I was her Uber driver growing up. I'm being 100% honest. Brian and Linda Schreck, her parents, will agree to this, but no, I used to give her rides with my daughter, the same age, to school every day at St. Francis, and she has always, Chris, been the best.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what sport. She's the Karen Kemner, whoever I'm sure if Michaela Fecky wanted to play any sport, she'd be great at it.
Sure.
They're just different kids, right? She is that. She's been great at everything she's done, and she's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
She's got a great brother and sister. She's got great parents. Great family, great extended family. I'm very happy for her. I'm very happy for a lot of the kids that have come through here and had success. She's certainly at the top of that list just because of how tremendous of an athlete she is. And it's another person where if I saw her, tomorrow at the grocery store, we'd have a wonderful conversation, and we haven't seen each other in months. She's that kind of person. Thrilled for her. Going to be interesting to follow that program from here on out with all of the, they're struggling a bit, and Robin Pinchton, if she's even going to last beyond this year. I mean, I know it was almost given a quota that she had to make the NCAA tournament or her job was in jeopardy. It's going to be interesting to follow that program, but for her and of course Danny Stevens, who's down there as well.
Right.
That's
another wonderful young man.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a power couple. I mean,
exactly.
But yeah, that's another great family.
Absolutely.
And there's more Stevens coming. I mean, you're going to be saying that name for a long time.
Ben, Marth, this was super fun. Can we do this again sometime?
Thanks for having me. All we need to do is have Shuck fall through the ice, and we're good.
Well, we'll try to avoid Shuckman on ice, which is not an ice capade or an ice folly or whatever you want to call it.
I would pay money to go see that.
We will keep our man off the ice from heretofore, but
thanks,
great
man.
to have you with us. Obviously great to have you in the gym coming up. He will be there for 3 games on Friday, 7 games on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's probably the best deal for basketball-wise. 1 ticket gets you in for everything. Again, it's the American Family KHQA Superfan Shootout. If you don't know the schedule, it'll be online tonight. Again, grateful to have Ben Marth alongside us for this podcast. And again, we'll bring him back. I've got some other questions I've always wanted to ask Ben that I think you will enjoy from a television standpoint down the road. So again, another episode of the podcast for Duerrisms. Again, our thanks to our friends from Advanced Physical Therapy for making it all possible.